big concerns about the use of social media has been fake news.
Yeah.
And while Meta partners with various organizations globally on fake news, I read recently that, it's got some masala in it,
Great.
so it's not the way the Americans
I
or
like
British would have it. But one of the big concerns is that artificial intelligence models were being skewed in a way that they started thinking that fake news was real. How do you prevent that? Because you've built some guardrails so far in the work that you've done with the Global Fact Check Network, but that the problem seems to be changing all the time.
Yeah.
AI models getting trained to start thinking that something which is fake is actually true. You can skew it by just pumping it out.
I think the thing to remember about AI and misinformation, or indeed any undesirable deep fakes, disinformation, anything that we don't want on the platform is, yes, it is true that AI might make it a bit easier for someone to produce a fake image, for instance. But that's not new. I mean, Photoshop's been around for years. You can fiddle around, stick someone's head on someone else's body, been able to do that for years. But it's true you might be able to do it a bit more quickly now. But it's also conversely the case that AI is our best defense. I'll give you a very concrete example. The prevalence, in other words, the proportion as a percentage of the total content on Facebook of hate speech on Facebook today is now as low as 0.02%. So that means if you were just scrolling endlessly on your news feed and you saw 10,000 bits of content, 2 bits of that, 2 bits of content might be hate speech. We've got it down so low. In fact, it's reduced by over 50% over the last couple of years, precisely because of AI. And the thing to remember about content moderation systems on platforms like Facebook is, from our point of view, it doesn't matter whether it's a human being or a robot that's produced the bad content. Our systems will still try and pick that up, regardless of how it's been generated. So I agree with you, it's an adversarial space. I agree with you that it's changing all the time. I'm actually quietly quite optimistic that the latest advances in AI almost help us strengthen our defences as much, if not more so, than help people produce bad content in the first place.
As we come to the last part of this interview, I want to spend a moment with you, Mr. Clegg, talking about how Meta views the India market at this moment. We saw in years gone by, Facebook at that time built out a whole organizational structure in India, having a full business head. Now, from the looks of it, in the manner in which that pyramid is being dismantled, from the outside, I wonder if Facebook organizationally is deprioritizing India.
Oh, no. I mean, look, I don't want to suggest that my travel arrangements are the most important thing for Facebook, but, I'm one of the more senior executives in the company, and, this is my second visit in well under a year, and I will keep coming back over and over again because it is a tremendously important market for us. There are hundreds of millions of Indians who use who use WhatsApp, who use Instagram, Facebook too, but Instagram and WhatsApp are really obviously the big apps here. And more than that, I think, for instance, Prime Minister Modi's vision of building a $5 trillion digital economy by the end of this decade, I think that's realizable. I think if you look at the talent here, I was in Mumbai yesterday talking to some of the digital entrepreneurs there. The creativity, the hunger, the energy is fantastic. I think you've got the second largest to online developer community in the world here in India, and that's only going to grow. Look at all the Indian engineers and leaders in Silicon Valley who lead some of the greatest, the biggest tech companies in the world. So as I said earlier, not only is India...
But not so much at Meta. Unlike a lot of companies where their top shot tech honchos are of Indian origin, it's not quite the case just at Meta, where just in the exclusive club right at the top.
Well, actually, that's not quite right. I mean, the most senior executive who's dealing with all of the multi-billion-dollar investments into our infrastructure to build these AI models is a very proud Indian, and is exceptionally good at his work. And there are many, many other very senior folk who have either Indian heritage or are Indian who work at Meta, as is the case, by the way, across Silicon Valley. But it's not really about an individual here, an individual there.
Yeah, of course.
It's just about the size, the dynamism, and the ambitions of the country, the extraordinary gifts that people have here in the core sciences that are relevant to technology, and, of course, the way that everyday people use our apps and use tech for everything, to run their business, to communicate with their families, to say good morning to people, to wish them a happy birthday, to buy and sell. And look at the way that WhatsApp here is used in a much more versatile way than it is in most parts of the world, not just to communicate, but to negotiate, to transact. And I think that is really a kind of clue to the future, and it's the reason why, far from sort of diminishing somehow our commitment to this country is only going to grow in the future. And it's one of the reasons why, hot on the heels of our landmark announcement last week to share and open source our latest AI technology, I was with other senior tech executives at a meeting in the White House in DC on Friday. We all met with President Biden and his team, and the first country I wanted to come and visit and talk further about this with policymakers is India, for a very good reason. Because the future, if you want to understand the future of the internet, if you want to understand the future governance of the internet, in my view, it's being built here in India.
Before you put on your public policy role at Meta, you were a very successful British politician. And I wonder, what did politics teach you about...
If I was that successful, I probably would still be in British politics. But
no,
anyway.
you were very successful. What did politics in Britain teach you about handling the politics of big tech in the US? A lot of the senior executives around Mark Zuckerberg have come and gone, except those who started out as part of his initial gang. You're extremely close. And I wonder if politics had a role in helping you navigate the politics of big tech.
Well, look, we're a social media company. I mean, we're many other things besides, but we're a social media company in essence. And we deal with the most fluid, complex, dynamic, wonderful and controversial thing of all, which is human speech. We're not selling widgets. We're not sending rockets up into the sky or selling cars. We're doing something way more difficult, which is human beings using our technology to communicate with each other. And that necessarily sucks into it moral, ethical, societal, legal and political debates. And it is totally legitimate that governments in particular take a very keen interest in what's going on these platforms. So of course, what was it, 4.5 years ago, it was not illogical for Mark Zuckerberg, you know, he's one of the great entrepreneurs of our age, he's an engineer, to say, do you know what, it would be quite handy to have someone working alongside me who kind of comes from a different world, from politics, because it's affecting, if you like, how these tech companies operate more and more and more. And look, time will tell whether that was a sensible decision of his. But for me, at least, I remember at the time thinking, relishing the idea, notwithstanding all the controversy, of trying to grapple with these really complex issues, but you know, the boundary between, as you said earlier, moderating content and free expression. One person's hate speech is another person's right to free speech. These are ancient debates about liberty and security, safety and free expression, which are just mutating in modern form on these platforms. So of course, for me, as someone who is in British and European political life for close to 2 decades, it was and it remains an amazing opportunity in the private sector to be grappling with these highly consequential political and kind of ethical concerns.